Q102. Now, next up, have you booked your summer holiday yet? My next guest is Paul Hackett, CEO of Click&Go Holidays. During this uncertain time, some of us will be holding off on booking and might be worried about price hikes due to these fuel increases. So, hi, Paul, thanks a million for coming in. How are you?
Very good. All
Good. So I suppose looking ahead into the rest of 2026, a lot of travellers and holidaymakers will be a little bit conscious at the moment about prices and about what's going on kind of globally with regards to the Iran war. What can we say to these holidaymakers now about what the year is going to look like?
Well, it is a little bit uncertain at the moment, that's for sure. And consumers are cautious about booking.
Yeah.
And they have some concerns about travel. But in real terms, if their holiday doesn't involve travel into the Middle East or transiting the Middle East, there should be no disruption to their travel plans. But even then, there are some caveats. There might be some caveats around potential flight surcharges from different airlines. But if we look at the positives and we do all the positives first, where can you go and where can you have no worries and just get on with it, get your holidays booked? Like, Europe is open for business and Europe is booking. So all of those city breaks, all of those sun holiday destinations, what we're seeing strong booking volumes for are kind of what you would call safe haven because of where they're located. So Spain, Portugal, Canary Islands, Madeira, Balearic Islands, all the Spanish costas, you know, and like the likes of Malta, Italy, France, Greece, all doing well.
Okay.
Turkey is taking a bit of a hit in terms of bookings. And it's not clear why, because there's no travel guidance for any holidaymaker not to go to Turkey. Turkey is a vast country. It's an enormous size. It does, on its very far eastern flank, share a border with Iran. But the tourists aren't going near that. The tourists are in the Med, over in Kushadasi or Dalaman or Bodrum or Antalya, which is absolutely miles away. But I think just because there's a proximity issue, they are a little bit cautious.
Yes.
So we are seeing like sensitivity around booking holidays to Turkey, but there is no government guidance not to travel.
Okay.
So if we're looking at Europe, sun, city breaks, Disneyland Paris, Portaventura, the theme parks, absolutely business as normal. USA, business as normal as it can be in terms of current environment for USA. But for all of that, USA does still see very, very strong booking volumes because Aer Lingus are one of the largest carriers on the transatlantic route from Europe into the USA. They have a phenomenal network. You have leisure travellers going for holidays. You have family visiting friends and relatives. You have business travel back and forth across the Atlantic. And then you have all of the Americans coming inbound into Europe. So USA doing fine. The challenge is for those consumers whose flights would transit through Abu Dhabi, Dubai and Qatar. That is where the disruption is currently. So for anybody back and forth to Australia, New Zealand, the Philippines, India,
That's
Asia,
difficult.
That is tricky.
Okay.
Now, there's plenty of other alternatives, but those alternatives are in pretty high demand.
And for those people who haven't, say, booked their holidays yet, is there concerns that the holidays and the flights are going to get a lot more expensive over the next couple of months?
I think if you're looking at short haul, so like 3 to 4 hours, European holidays, there's no indication at this stage that prices are going to go up. There's nothing to indicate that prices have already gone up. Because the war is there in the background of everybody's head, I think consumer confidence has taken a dip. And there are other price issues affecting consumers. So the cost of filling their car, if they have a petrol or diesel, fuel for home heating, gas for home heating, all of those prices are going up. And general consumer uncertainty, or when there's any level of uncertainty, means people hold back. So I think, and that's not only Irish consumers, all consumers are holding back, watching and waiting whilst this is going on. Bookings are still happening, but it's probably down in the order of 15 to 20%.
Okay.
As to what you would expect for this time of the year. And because demand is down, prices aren't going up.
Okay. And you were mentioning there, I suppose, about destinations. And when we look at Europe, as we said, it's a vast continent. There's plenty of destinations which are completely and utterly safe. As we said, Spain, Portugal, places that are traditional holidays.
Yes.
But what about the likes of, as you said, Turkey, Cyprus, Greece? I noticed Greece was quite cheap this year.
Greece is cheap, and probably Greece is cheap because there's a lot more capacity, and possibly again demand has softened. Like geographically, it is in the Eastern Mediterranean. And I would say any consumer who hasn't yet booked is probably looking at a map or seeing the map when they see the news and kind of going,
yes,
I'll go somewhere else. And that to me is normal consumer behaviour. What it means is hopefully when things calm down, and hopefully they will calm down for everybody's sake, there's going to be an awful lot of great deals in Greece and Turkey because they haven't been booking at the volumes that they would expect to book for March. For Greece, we have not seen the same level of drop as we have for Turkey.
Okay.
Cyprus used to be hugely popular in the Irish market when there were charter flights. There's now 2 flights a week with Ryanair. It's tiny volume. There should be tons more capacity to Cyprus. But for the scheduled carriers, from a distance point of view, it's
a long flight. Is it nearly 5 hours?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know why there's more flights for Turkey than there is for Cyprus. I think the value in Turkey has always been really strong, and that's what's driven the demand there. Cyprus is definitely a more upmarket destination. So capacity is less there. But you're right. Greece is great value this year.
It is. And I was looking at, I think, Santorini. Because it's a place that it's been on so many people's bucket lists, and it was kind of overpopulated in the last couple of years. But they did have a bit of an issue with concerns about an earthquake recently too.
About 2 years ago, they had the earthquake. But I think the bigger issue there, Elisabeth, is exactly what you alluded to. It was over-touristed.
Yeah.
Santorini, everybody wanted to go to Santorini. It was everywhere on social media. It was just the picture postcard island to go to. There were direct flights in all of a sudden. The hoteliers thought all their Christmases had arrived at once, and they put the prices to a point where it became really expensive.
Ridiculous.
Out of all of the islands, accommodation costs were very high in Santorini, and just your ordinary eating out and drinking costs were very high in Santorini relative to other Greek destinations. So I think they kicked themselves, or they've punched themselves in the foot, so to speak, or whatever that correct phrase is. And people have stayed away. People have just said, do you know what? Lovely island, fabulous, great to see it, but I'm not going back because it was too expensive.
Do you think you'll get more value there then if you go now?
100%.
Really? Okay, I'm going to go book my flight.
Demand and supply always works, because the hotel beds are still there. The hotel rooms are still there. Those hoteliers need to fill those rooms. And I think it's a really good lesson in a broader level around tourism that, if you get too comfortable in terms of your price point and you start overcharging consumers and you start overpacking a destination.
Yes.
There's a result, and the result is that consumers just decide not to go.
And it's interesting because obviously we saw cruises, and then there was I think there was a stipulation that certain cruises that they couldn't actually dock there, even though they had promised people this is on their itinerary, and they're thinking I'm going to Santorini, and they're like, oh no, sorry, you can't.
Yeah, there was again, it was the over-tourism piece. And I think it was over-promising in terms of the delivery of availability for cruise lines to dock. So some of the cruise ships were having to sit in the bay and tender the passengers in, which makes it a little bit longer for the day and the transfer time to get to the destination. So if you're docked, you're right at the port. You can just walk off the ship. If you're tendered, you have to get onto a smaller boat and transfer by sea across to the port itself. So it just makes it a little bit more of a schlep. And everybody wanted to see Santorini. So not only were you having to get to the dock, then you're having to get up the cliff to get to Thera.
And I actually heard of someone, I think it was there was about a 2-hour wait for a cable car to come back down, or else it was 1,100 steps.
There's no no thank you, I wouldn't be doing 1,100 steps. I'll be turning back around and getting back on the ship for a cocktail. But I think that speaks again to the over-tourism piece. If there's too many. So this year they have controlled it. Certain cruise lines are going in, certain cruise lines are not going in and are opting for alternative islands.
Okay.
Like Santorini is quite unique, but thankfully Greece is spoiled for choice when it comes to all of the different island options that they have.
Okay, and we saw earlier on today, kind of getting back onto fuel prices, Michael O'Leary, he's quite confident that they are going to be able to withstand it, but he did say that some other competitors, I think as Wizz Air, have already kind of said that they're going to curtail certain numbers of flights.
Yeah, I think by the sound of what Michael O'Leary was saying this morning on Sky News, they have hedged their fuel, which means that they have effectively advance purchased their fuel, which makes sense because fuel is such a key component of airline costs. So 80% of their costs are hedged right through to March 27. Where he has a concern is around other airlines and the aviation sector in general, because when we hear of people cancelling flights, be it any other airline, like Wizz don't fly into Ireland, so there's no impact here, but they are a low-cost carrier for Central Europe. And for them not to have a guarantee on their supply or not to have hedging speaks a little business ethos that exists within the company, because they know they have the aircraft, they know they have the routes planned, they're selling the seats. If they haven't secured the supply and they haven't secured the price, it talks to their business side of operations rather than anything else. But yeah, it is worrying. Fingers crossed, and it literally is fingers crossed. Like when you get into these global situations, nobody has the answers.
We don't. I think it was Donald Trump today said he potentially could be over in 2 or 3 weeks. I think he's been promising that from the very beginning. But it's interesting to note companies kind of making that decision early on. I know Explora Journeys have changed their itineraries for 2027. They were supposed to do Middle Eastern itineraries, and they've decided we're not going to risk it and we're going to change the offering. Yes,
and other cruise lines, TUI and MSC Cruises, have also repositioned those ships, because the great thing about a ship is you can move it.
You can get anywhere,
it's not like a hotel. Like the hotels that exist in Qatar, in Dubai and in Abu Dhabi are probably looking at quite bleak prospects for the next couple of years in terms of demand. The cruise lines, on the other hand, can just move that ship. So MSC and Explorer, as you've mentioned, TUI as well, more so for their German part of their business called Mindshift, they have moved those ships to the Caribbean for winter.
Yes.
So, if you're in Dubai for winter, it's warm weather. You're not going to get that sort of weather in the Med. You're not going to have the demand, but you will have the demand in the Caribbean. So I think what we're going to see for next winter, which is winter 26, 27, so this coming winter, it's too soon to talk about this coming winter when we're already
we haven't
finished.
gotten the summer yet.
Yeah. There will be a lot of supply in the Caribbean for cruise, which should bring prices down.
Yes. And then speaking of cruises, you have seen strong growth in cruises.
Really strong.
20% year on year.
Yeah. The Irish market, you're an advocate for cruise holidays.
I'm a big cruise fan. I have to say. I think I'm like numero uno of this pro cruise. I just love them.
Yeah. And more of us need to be like that. And, I'm only back. I was down. I have a terrible hard job. I was down in Lanzarote last week looking at hotels. And one of the things that crossed my mind was, oh my God, the value for money on a cruise holiday relative to a hotel. When you see the food offering on a cruise ship relative to a hotel, the entertainment, all of the different options. So I'm a total cruise advocate like you are. So that's why we're seeing growth at 20%. The market in Ireland is growing from a small base. So there were only 40,000 plus people going on cruises. It's now up to 60, and that's over a couple of years, and that has the potential to grow much higher. In real terms, when we look at the UK market for cruising and we look at the Republic of Ireland market for cruising, we should be closer to 200,000 people a year going on cruise holidays, not 60. So there's tons of potential for growth in the cruise market, and we'll see that. That will come.
And I don't know if you've seen today, they now announced a direct flight from Dublin to Shanghai.
Wow. Brilliant.
Yes. We were talking earlier on, I think, about transiting through the Middle East.
Yes.
Could these new flights into, I know we've seen a flight into Beijing as well, direct from Dublin. Could these new flights offer people an alternative route to get down to Australia?
Absolutely. Historically, before we had Dubai, Abu Dhabi and Qatar, everything to Australia went through Europe and then through Bangkok, Singapore, Hong Kong. So China is an equally good route. You're going up over the North Pole and coming down into China, and you're 6 or 7 hours from there down into Australia. And I think consumers will be looking at that in the short term. And it's great to see Shanghai opening up as a direct service, because we have tons of cruise passengers who cruise out of Shanghai.
They do.
And we currently have to route them through other gateways. So to get a direct into Shanghai is absolutely brilliant.
Great, Paul.
Delighted to see that coming on.
Well, and if people want to find information about some of the cruise deals, or in general their deals that you guys have at the moment, is there somewhere where they can find that?
Yeah, go on to clickandgoholidays.com, go on to clickandgo.com, call us. We're open 7 days a week. We're here in Dublin. We're Irish company, 7 days a week, 362 days a year, and we love talking to people and love talking about holidays.
Thank you so much.